You guys ever seen clear coolant that smells like absolute shit? Because I haven't. Alright guys, hopefully the washing machine in the background is not too distracting and you can hear me pretty well, but I'm doing the coolant exchange on the bike right now. I just wanted to kind of give you guys a little sample of what we're dealing with here. So this is what came out. It's just dirty and clear. There's no color to it. You can see the dirt, but you can also see how clear it is because you can see to the bottom of the container. Smells really bad too. That's basically what was inside of here, except what inside of here was more concentrated and dark. So I'm not sure what this is. I'm not sure if it's pure water and maybe they put some water wetter or something like that in there. That could very well be the case. I have some distilled vinegar, distilled water. I'm gonna mix a 50-50 blend. I'm gonna fill the system at this point because I've already drained it. I'm gonna fill the system with a 50-50 mix of the distilled water, distilled vinegar, run the bike up to operating temperature, let it cool down, and then I'm gonna drain it again. And then I will do one flush of nothing but distilled water, and then at that point I think we'll be ready to go ahead and fill the bike up with coolant. Cool thing about this bike is not only do you have your water pump drain bolt right there, but also up here there's a drain bolt that goes in right here that goes directly to the block. So what I'm going to do right now first is run about a half gallon of this distilled water through the system while it's open and just kind of push stuff out as it goes in, and then I'm going to use the other half of that to make the mixture, and then we'll fill it up, start it up, and do another drain. So I will turn the camera back on when we're ready to drain the distilled vinegar mixture. See you guys in a minute. Alright, so I'm finished with the distilled vinegar mixture. The bike takes about, I think it says 3.1 liters in the manual. And the way that you know that you're done is because, for one, you can see the coolant all the way up here. But this is going to happen several times while you're filling it up. It's going to rise to the top. What you have to do here on the Z1000 and on some other bikes is there's a bleeder screw right here that's attached to the coolant system. You need to crack this open while you're filling the bike up. The plugs are in place, so nothing can get out. Every time the water comes up to the filler neck, what I do is I come down here to the lower radiator hose and I give it just gentle pushes. And what that does is it helps burp air up and out of the system. And then you just keep doing that until when you're finally burping, this is what's going to happen. Instead of the water disappearing, it's going to stay up here and watch the bleeder. See how now we have water coming up out of the bleeder as well? So what we're good to do now is close that bleeder off, put the cap back on, hook the fuel tank back up, and we're good to start the bike. It's funny, like, I don't know if you guys can hear me, but the bike is going like up in temperature and then it drops. So even just the flush solution that we have in there is doing a better job at dissipating heat than whatever crap was in there. So I'm really glad that I did this flush, but it's weird. Like the temperature gauge goes up and then it drops a couple degrees and then it goes back up and then it drops a couple degrees. Like it's like slowly rising up. It used to heat up pretty quick on cold start. Now it's like taking its time, so that's pretty good. We just want to see the bike come up to operating temperature, possibly hear the fan kick in, which the fan will kick on like 214 degrees or so, so it's going to be a little bit. And then I'll let the bike cool off for about 30 minutes to an hour, come out here and drain this, and then fill it up with distilled water by itself, do a drain with that, and then I'll be ready to add the coolant in. So this is pretty crazy. Just got done running it for that first time. I let the temperature get all the way up to 214 or 216-ish degrees. The fan kicked on immediately like I knew it would at 214 degrees. And what's crazy is the fan kicked in and the bike immediately started falling, down in numbers. Like I think the fan was on for like 10 seconds and it kicked it back down to 208 degrees. It's never done that before, like ever. If I'm out on the street idling at a light, I've seen this thing raise all the way up to like 220 degrees, maybe 223, which the threshold for overheating is like 240 plus degrees, so it's never overheated. But the fact the fan kicked on and knocked the temperature down so fast just by getting that crap coolant or whatever that was in the bike out of there is pretty incredible. So I'm actually excited to take this thing for a ride when I get the new coolant in there and see how it handles the heat much better on a ride. So good stuff. All right, guys, so here we are for the draining of the vinegar distilled water mixture. I'm going to go ahead and turn the flash on to see what we can see in the pan here. So this is what we have in our pan. Pretty clear. A little bit of debris, but some of that could have came off the actual like engine casing and stuff as things drained out and slapped all over the place. It's not the cleanest thing in the world to do. Yeah, like you can see little particles down there. Nothing serious. I see a little bit of metal flake, which is normal. Very tiny pieces of metal flake. You'll see that in almost every coolant change you do, especially because as the water pump wears, it leaves little flakes behind. As long as they're small and you're not seeing gigantic chunks of stuff in here, you should be pretty good. But for the most part, it looks crystal clear. Smells a lot like salad dressing. But all right, at this point, I'm going to fill up the bike with just distilled water. I'm going to run it one more time, let it cool down, drain it, and then we will be ready for the coolant. So I'll be back in a few minutes. Almost forgot to show this, but as you can see here, the system was full, and it actually pushed some of the distilled vinegar and water mixture into the reservoir tank because that was completely empty. I put nothing in there, so that's how we know we have a nice full system as well when we did our flush. So I can't forget to take this out and drain that because at the end we're going to fill that with coolant, and I don't want that distilled vinegar stuff going back into the engine at this time. So I'm going to pull that off, drain it out, make sure it's clean. Alright guys, so I just ran the bike up to operating temperature and it refused to get any hotter than 205 degrees. Like it hit 205 degrees and it just stalled. It would not go any higher. I sat there and I waited and I waited and I waited. It just refused to go any higher. And no, the fan was not blowing on it at the time. The fan's on it now to help cool it down a little bit faster so I can drain this out tonight and fill it with the coolant. But yeah, that's actually a pretty good sign. And some of that could be because the ambient temperature outside is not as hot as it was a few hours ago, but it really hasn't changed all that much. It's a pretty good sign that it seems to be dissipating heat a whole lot better, like a ton better. If I had let this sit here and idle with that crap that was in there when we first started, it would have easily went up to, you know, the 214 degrees, and then the fan would have kicked on, and it probably would have struggled to cool it down. But like I said earlier, hopefully you guys could hear me when the bike was running. When it had the 50-50 flush in it, it did extremely well. It got up to 214 degrees, and immediately the fan kicked on, and within under 10 seconds, it cooled itself back down to like 203 degrees or so, I believe, and the fan cut off. Like immediately, it was like 5 seconds. It's never done that before. So I'm really glad that I'm doing this and got that old disgusting crap out of there. Yet again, some of it got into the expansion tank, so we'll drain that out before we put our coolant in. Just make sure that you let your bikes cool down in between flushes completely, because you do not want to get sprayed with hot water. So you never, ever, ever take the reservoir or the fill cap off while the bike is hot. Always wait. So I'm going to let this thing cool down, and then I'm going to come back when we're ready to fill it up with coolant. So here's what we have coming out of our last flush. Nice and crystal clear. Alright, so this is the final warm-up. It has nothing but coolant in it, and like I said, I just used Prestone 50/50 because it's silicate free, which is really good for motorcycles and aluminum radiators. I've used this before in my Ninja 300 and it worked out perfect, so I figured it would work in the Z1000 just as good. I didn't go with engine ice because the bike, I would need to buy like 2 bottles of engine ice, and 2 bottles of engine ice is like $40, if not a little bit more than that right now on the market. And the Prestone was under $10, so it's a no-brainer when you're trying to do maintenance on the fly and on the cheap. You get what you get and you don't throw a fit, so I know it's going to work out just fine, and the bike's going to run way better and way cooler than having that crap that was in there at the beginning. So I'm going to let this get up to temperature. almost all the way to the full line in the bottle. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this video. Recorded 2 videos in one day, so making progress with the channel, making progress with the content. Hope you guys enjoy it. I'm going to leave the cover off of this side because I'm going to come out tomorrow morning and see if any of our coolant gets pulled into the system, and I will top it off from there. So that's why I left a little bit of gap here, because if the fluid goes either direction, I have a little breathing room there. So I let the bike come up to full operating temperature. Now it's going to go all the way back down to cold, and we'll see what happens with this fluid and top it off from there. Hope you guys enjoyed the content. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate all the new subscribers. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.